This is the Mind Body Detox Podcast, where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom on how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back, everyone, to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. I'm your host, integrative intuitive medium, Kara Lovehart, and I have my special guest here, Denzi Dark. And today we're going to go into introducing who you are, but today is a very special episode because we're going to be talking about the PA witch hunt with looking at fortune tellers as it being illegal. We're going to talk about the issue of this in general, and Denzi and I were actually planning on doing this episode a couple weeks ago and specifically talking about in this day and age, when we're seeing some things that we don't agree with, there is no legal governing body for intuitive arts readers. How do we find a reader that's reputable? How do we look for red flags of things we maybe want to stay away from? And how do you as a client and you as a reader hold other people accountable, and so that we can really bring this profession and some of the amazing healing and transformational work that we do as readers into the mainstream? And most importantly, how can we eradicate fear and support empowerment, not just for people who are getting readings, people who are readers, but also individuals who are afraid and they are unaware of what this profession is, and to do some education instead of creating more spaces of people feeling victimized by specifically this incident that we're going to be bringing on Beck Lawrence today. She is the owner of the Serpent Key, and this is a metaphysical shop in Hanover, Pennsylvania. And so we're going to talk about the chief of police coming in and knocking at her door and letting her know that fortune telling, aka her tarot readings, are illegal. So we're going to talk about that, interview her today, as well as Pat Dumas, 55 years plus as a tarot reader. And so we're going to go and kind of look at a younger intuitive reader, as well as someone who's been in the profession for a long time. What has changed over the course of the years? And also we're going to talk about Denzi and I's experience as well, being in readers, and some of the really, I don't want to say not so fun stories we have, but if you look at them we look at them with humor, because we're trying to find healing instead of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. So some of the seedy underbelly stories that we've experienced in this profession. So Denzi, first I want to have you share a little bit about your background,
okay,
who you are, how we met, and really what you're doing here, what you're passionate about coming on to the show today.
Right. So my name's Denzi Dark. I am a tarot reader. I am a dark artist. I am a published author and poet. I've been in the tarot community since I was 13 years old. I'm not going to tell you how many years because I'm not going to date myself like that, but it's been a while. Not quite as many as Pat. But, it's interesting that when we first started talking about doing this episode, that this had not happened yet. And then this happened, and it was the green light to go, I think. I wanted to be a part of this podcast, one, because tarot has been a real beacon of light in my life through some really dark moments, and I believe most tarot readers feel that way. That's why they're so drawn to it. It's a real healing for us. So I'm here to advocate for that. And represent something that has probably saved my life.
Yeah. And I think it's really ripe timing for this because, this is something that you might have just heard about this, that, oh, wait, there's a store in Hanover that's had this incident happening. But this isn't the first incident that's happened in Pennsylvania. And now this has gone global. So this information is now, people are really like, what? Are you kidding me? This is really. And so we are very fortunate to have been supported by an amazing local community here in South Central PA, by one of the oldest metaphysical bookstores, 36 years this year, 2023, in operation. And that's New Visions Books and Gifts. So that bookstore is owned and operated by Bill Trivett and Bob Hall. Bill Trivett is actually here with us in spirit. He passed away in 2018. And so it's one of those things where we both had this amazing community that supported us as intuitive healers, as intuitive readers, and supported us in a way to professionally present ourselves in an ethical way, in a way that's doing no harm, in a way that's supporting and empowering other people. So we know from our journey how powerful being a reader can be, but we also know some of the things that happen out there that we want to speak out against in a way that's empowering to help you guys know what to look for. So yeah, I'm really grateful that Bill's here with us today.
I am grateful for Bill always.
Yeah, and that's actually how me and Denzi met. Yeah. So we've been friends for a long time.
Many moons ago.
Yeah. So we're of course here. We're really excited to again really pay our debts, not debts. We want to pay our what's the word I'm looking for here? Homage. I would pay our respects and gratitude to the amazing community that has been here in Central PA. And for those of you out there who are listeners, if you don't have a community, what's really great about the online space now, there is so much support for people who are in a path of walking in a personal spiritual path. And then one other thing I want to mention before we go forward here, we're going to actually bring Beck Lawrence on from the Serpent's Key and interview her next. But I just want to mention that this episode may be triggering for some of you. I'm going to give you a trigger warning if you have any sort of trauma around, any sort of spiritual trauma, religious trauma, or anything around even yourself if you've had a bad experience with an intuitive reader. And again, that's what we're here to talk about, to expose that and to share some of the things that have happened. And so we want to just let you know, if you do need support with that, you're going to have in the show notes some really great resources to reach out to. We did an episode the last episode of the Mind Body Detox podcast. We had holistic psychotherapist Ali Kokert on, and we talked about healing religious and spiritual trauma. And it was a really good episode. We had an amazing response from that. So you can absolutely go listen to that episode after this one if you want to. It's very helpful, a lot of resources, and we're going to share a lot of the same resources in the show notes if you need someone to reach out to or to talk to. And later on in the episode, we're going to talk more about how you can do that as well. So trigger warning, just so you make sure you just check in with yourself today before you listen to this to see how you're feeling, because we want to stay in a space of empowerment and allowing healing and forgiveness and gratitude around the opportunity we have right now with this incident and the other incidents that have happened to really shine light on this. So I'm very grateful and honored we can do that.
Well, thank you for having me, Kara. I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah. So without further ado, we're going to actually bring on Beck Lawrence to the show.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate the time that you've given me. I really do.
Thank you. And we're very honored that you are holding a really powerful space for the spiritual community in what you're doing. And we want to just first have you share, first off, what got you into being a reader and your spiritual path, and tell us about the Serpent's Key, your shop, and then let's go into exactly what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been a practicing witch for just over 13 years. I celebrated it on my 26th birthday, which was like in September. So I also started kind of getting into the witchier side of things at 13. I think that is a very magical number, magical age. Ironically, learned about Wicca from Scooby-Doo. Like quite literally. The Hex Girls, one of them, she was like a Wiccan, and I was like that's it. That's who I want to be. So it precipitated into a really beautiful, like discovering a really beautiful spirituality that I felt like definitely not a Wiccan necessarily anymore, but I did find my own path through that. And around that time, actually, is when I got my first tarot deck. And I would say that, witchcraft, my spirituality, my practice, including tarot, has also been a very grounding thing for me in my life. So I'm just really grateful that I've gotten to build the Serpent's Key, which is my metaphysical store. It's really tiny. It's just me. But we're here in Hanover, Pennsylvania, the Serpent's Key shop and sanctuary, because it is a safe place for anybody to explore their spirituality. We have community altar spaces. We have all sorts of stuff. And I'm always here to answer questions, because trust me, if I haven't done it, I probably know someone who has. So there's no such thing as stupid questions here, But yeah, basically, I opened up my big storefront retail space in July. So that was fun. And I reached out to Main Street Hanover, which is a really wonderful organization that helps small businesses promote themselves, especially in the downtown area. So they wrote a really, really nice article about everything that we're doing, here at the shop, including things like community cleanups, where we literally went around one morning and just cleaned up trash like in the square, and we picked up about 8 pounds of cigarette butts. Like, it was pretty gross. And then we also work with local animal shelters to collect up donations and really kind of take the strain off of people who are rescuing cats specifically. So they wrote up this whole little article about us, and it went out Tuesday, I believe, the 2nd or 3rd of October. And Police Chief Chad Martin himself read the article and took issue, I guess, with the fact that I was reading tarot, and decided to take some time to come to my shop and inform me that there is technically a law that forbids tarot reading. And yeah, he wasn't going to arrest me or charge me that day. He just wanted me to make sure that I knew about the law. So
we're curious about how you reacted when that happened. What was the experience like for you? And what do you think about at the end of the day? What were your processes?
So initially I was I walked out of therapy and read the email on my phone that I had received from Main Street Hanover saying hey, just so you have a heads up, the police chief called us and said he's going to come give you a visit during your next business day. So I'm reading that email on my phone, and I'm I should just turn back around, go back right into therapy. Are you kidding me right now? No, but anyways, I literally saw that, and I turned off my phone and looked at it again, and it was still there. And I was okay, so this is happening. Great. And it was honestly a little bit of panic, because who wants the cops coming to your place of business? That's not cool. I don't know. I never got in trouble in school. I never even got sent to the principal's office. So anytime I'm coming up against hey, you did something wrong, I'm I'm sorry, what did I do? But in this case, it's well, I didn't do anything wrong. Because if you look at the law, I actually don't necessarily disagree with it. I think there is room for improvement, but it's there to protect people from, the spiritual or intuitive people who are hey, if you give me $10,000, this crystal here might cure your cancer. I'm going to be the first person to tell you to go to the hospital. You know what I mean? I went to art school, I'm not that person. So I really just, what came down to it is that himself and another officer came into my shop on a Thursday, which was 48 hours after I got that email. And they refused to let me record our conversation. They declined consent to that. So that immediately put off a little bit of a red flag for me. And when I told them that I wasn't going to speak to them without my legal representation present, Chad Martin sighed and said, I'm just trying to have an adult conversation with you. So, keeping that sort of in mind, I simply was you know what, you're free to speak your piece, and he again informed me that what I was doing was technically illegal under Pennsylvania law. He could come back if anyone, decided to report me for anything. If he got any reports, he would be back. But it really just kind of seemed like an intimidation tactic. I literally was cornered in my own shop by 2 grown men. And no offense, I'm 5'6", 120, I'm not a threat. And they really made it feel just very aggressive. And that was really stressful. However, I really feel the amount of support I got from my community gave me that strength and will to look the police chief in his eyes and say, take a look around. Everything is in order here, sir. Because it is. I'm a Virgo. I did my research. I knew about the law, but it also hasn't been prosecuted for tarot reading, what I do, it's only been prosecuted in tandem with major cases of fraud during which like the person was using fortune telling as like a guise of scamming people out of like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if I was doing that, I would be wearing all Dior. Like, this is thrifted, like, you know. So sorry, I have to laugh. Like, it's if I don't laugh, I will cry. You know.
Can I interject here? So
yes, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I was talking to Kara about this, too, about the intimidation factor, right? And we wonder, you know, I always feel like when situations like this arise where there's authority kind of fluffing its feathers, and I always find the individuals on the receiving end of that are female business owners or female practitioners versus male practitioners, right? So I have been practicing tarot since I was 13 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I have never, not one time, I've read for colleges.
Yep.
I've read for Central Penn College every year for many years up until COVID. During their Harvest Festival, I've been my own practitioner in my own home, and I even have a page, tarot reader, my former name though. You know, I've never once been approached by anybody. Of course, I've been called a witch and everything else, and I'm like, thanks, I know, isn't it amazing?
Yeah, right.
Right, thank you.
Right,
you know,
right.
I worked hard for this, you know. But I was telling Kara, I was like, you know, I really feel like a lot of the instances that I see of persecution, right? It takes me back to like the Salem fucking witch trials, right? Where, oh, you know, authority is a lot of the masculine energy, right? And we're going to bully somebody into stopping them from doing what I don't agree with, which is unacceptable, in my opinion.
I think the most interesting thing that I've learned about the history of Pennsylvania throughout all of this is that there was a trial where a woman was being brought in front of William Penn, as in like Pennsylvania, William Penn. And they were like, oh, she's a witch. She like cursed the well and she's the reason that our animals are dying. And he looked at this poor woman who was like, she was like a Swedish immigrant. So she couldn't even speak English. Like, he was like, are you a witch? And she would say, yes, you know, like trying to respond and stuff. And he brought they kept bringing this woman in front of William Penn, and he finally said to the men, if you continue to harass this poor woman, I will hold you in contempt of court. Her religion is none of your business. That's why Pennsylvania was established. And I was like, okay, William, let's go. You know, like, I just think it's really interesting that this is coming back up again. So when you say the Salem witch trials, like, you're not wrong. Like, this has happened. I think the most recent one was actually in York County in 1930. There was a witchcraft trial, like a legitimate one. Legitimate, whatever. But anyways, it's just very interesting to see history kind of repeating itself and being that cyclical, like, spiral nature that we know it to be.
So we're going to bring Pat on here. So Pat's been reading for over 55 years. But before we do, I want to just note that what you said about it being cyclical.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the land here in Pennsylvania, we have so much of this history, but we also have Gettysburg. So if you think about Gettysburg is a point that the land has been imprinted, the history has been imprinted here of polarization, a meeting point of polarized opposite views. And so I see this as a space in a philosophical space that we are coming together in a way that we can find this peace. And it doesn't have to be a war.
Yep.
In which, you know, how interesting it is that this is a collective thing. You know, we were talking about this before the show went live with Pat. She is also an astrologer, and we talked about her predicting this year of these energies coming and this polarization, these misguided witch hunts, things coming up for us to clear. So I'm just so honored that we can be in this space together to share and empower ourselves and each other, because one of the things that we know that, you know, everyone has different perspectives, and there is a lot of fear around what we do because of misinformation, because of downright fraud and people doing things they shouldn't be doing, and because of just this unawareness and the what we don't understand, we fear, the fear of the unknown. And so we don't even know. I'm so sorry for the way that you felt the intimidation and that experience for you. So nothing could take away that experience. And I apologize for your community too, those out there who are also affected by this. But also I want to let us all know this is an opportunity for us as a community, a spiritual community, to allow our hearts to find this sense of healing in this space when we're ready, and look at the perspective of, we have no idea what happened to that cop. We have no idea if he's been through trauma. Most police officers have some sort of trauma. We feel out of control. And in that space, we're more likely to have fear around things we don't understand. Or who knows, maybe he had a really horrible reader, say something or do something that affected his life in a deep way. So we want to just keep all these perspectives, never assume we have no idea what happened. Right. But still for me, like, I feel that trigger, of listening to your story, like, that fire rising up in me. But I'm asking us to take that fire that's rising up and move from the space of, oh, they did this, othering those police officers, these people, these Christians, these religious organizations, whatever we want to say the other is. Let's move away from othering, because that's exactly what continues to perpetuate that which we are trying to clear in the collective right now, and with hopefully our part, all of our voices here today, in doing our part to clear this for the history of the collective.
Absolutely. So. And I think that something beautiful that I know we talked about a little bit before, but a pastor from a local church came into my shop yesterday and literally gave me a hug and was like, I'm so sorry that this is happening to you. The people who are doing this are not acting the way that Jesus would have wanted them to do. But you know what? You going out and helping your community and helping other people, ironically, is exactly what he asks of his disciples. And so how am I supposed to say that what you're doing is wrong when you are acting in the way that Christ would want you to? And I was like, thank you, Pastor. I appreciate you. Gave him a big hug and stuff. And I'm hoping that we can continue to work together to heal those relations. And so my clientele, my, the people, my community can help heal some of the trauma they might have incurred at the church, and come to a positive understanding. And that at the same time, perhaps I can help be a representative of what we do here and come to terms of understanding of no, we can coexist, and that's really my goal, moving forward.
Love that. And I will support you and every your community in that way. We're so fortunate. I'm the owner of Firefly Hollow Holistic Wellness Center, and we're so fortunate. We have 13 team members, and we have pagan on our staff, we have Christians on our staff, we have atheists on our staff, and all of us are so supportive of the diversity. And it's to me, every time I go to work, I'm just so grateful that we have an amazing staff of professionals that are just willing to be here to help the world make it a better place.
Exactly.
All right, Miss Pat, let's bring Miss Pat Dumas on. Miss Pat, let's see where she's at. There she is.
Hello.
Hi there, Pat. So First, I wanted to check in and see if you had anything as far as that you wanted to share with us about your experience and background in being a reader. I would love to have you share with the community your experience.
I have to say that I'm so sorry for what Beck has experienced, because I've been blessed not to ever have to face anything of that nature. I'm both blessed and I'm actually grateful, because I don't think I have the poise that this young woman has. I'd probably get quite angry and not react well. So I truly believe things happen for a reason. And I think that what's going on now makes a lot of sense when we look at what's going on in the world. We, as readers, as holistic healers, as whatever work we do to help lighten the load for our fellow man through the work that we do, we're now more needed than ever before. And this has to not stop us from doing that. That's what I would say is the big, big message to take away from this.
Facts.
Absolutely. Yeah. People have told, they're like, oh, are you going to not talk about tarot anymore? I'm like, no, I'm going to do it louder and I'm going to do it more. Are you kidding me? What are you talking about? No. Yeah. So yeah, I'm full-heartedly on the same page.
Well, I think that one of the reasons we wanted to bring Pat on today is because you've been reading for over 55 years as a tarot reader.
Not professionally, because it didn't occur to me to do it professionally. I didn't, for one thing, when I was 12, I didn't know you could do it professionally. I really thought it was kind of, that was back in the day when you were not supposed to take money for your spiritual gifts. And I have since realized, no, everybody has a mortgage, so, everybody's,
We were talking with Pat that if we were living a monastic lifestyle, when you are a priest or a minister, you're taken care of by the church for your room and board.
Exactly.
And in this day and age, if you are doing spiritual healing work, whether it's Reiki or reading or whatever you want to say you're doing, you're not living a monastic life. If we were, we wouldn't have to charge for our services.
And on top of that, someone else really close to me, so either someone who came in or someone in my life, I don't remember who, but they were mentioning that money is an exchange of energy. We talk about cash flow, right? Yeah. And it's the way that we live in a capitalist society. So it is, in my mind, if you are providing a legitimate service, there should be no question about that, especially when we aren't able to perhaps have the same ministry or have the same allowances even as a church would, where they are being taken care of by the community. That's not my reality, at least, which would be, I'm not asking for that by any means, but this is a way that, the energy flows by money into my shop, and now I can afford more books. So now I can afford more incense. So now I can serve my community in a better way, So that's kind of how.
And you can pay taxes to your community to help support social services.
Oh, trust me. The government loves the money that I give them. Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Money is the universal language in our society right now. So, yeah.
It's also an energetic contract.
Right.
It's an energetic contract.
100%.
So I completely agree that it kind of ends the connection between you and your client. It's like, okay, we're done. So there you go.
Right. That's it.
So Pat, how has being involved in the intuitive arts and reading changed over the years since you've been starting practice?
Wow. Well, as we spoke a little bit before we started, when I began, the stigma was not the same. It was more like you were viewed as nuts as opposed to evil. I don't know is the best way to put it. She's a little different is how I was being described by my family members. She likes to explore. Well, they're right. They're very right. I think if we look at the advent of social media, and we look at what the lack of civility that went hand in hand with social media coming into play, with people not being held to account for what they say and for the effect that they can evince on their community around them. I mean, we've all become part of this meme environment where it's that zinger that gets thrown out there. And when you move from being seen as just a little bit different to being seen as evil, and that's okay, that's where the problem begins.
Right.
I think the kind of energy that is bringing this unfortunate stuff to the foreground has always been there, but in the last 10 to 15 years, suddenly it's okay to be seen that way. And that is, I think the best way to describe this is, as painful and as miserable and as rotten as this is, we are serving the purpose of helping to lance a boil that has needed to be lanced for 150 to 200 years. It's time to let the poison drain out. If we keep covering it up with a bandage and not dealing with it, it's going to continue to keep cropping up. So for me, the change has been more not the art, but the society in which the art is practiced.
I think you really nailed it there, Pat, too, with the social media giving a boldness to those that would condemn or speak out without having any accountability. Like you can be the most vile individual online towards somebody close your laptop, turn your phone off, and that's the end of it. You never have to think about it again. So social media has given a boldness to some of the darker energies that are out there to distract and disrupt positive things, right? And the lancing of the boil, yeah, it's time to stop putting band-aids over bullet holes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, the final question I have for you, Pat, unless you have anything else you want to share, of course, today is, what are the things that we can do as readers and as readees, those who are clients of intuitive arts healers, to support this transition? Because this is a transition to expose and to bring about light, and how we can bring forth this profession in a way that's accepted and supported and out there for empowerment of others,
Yes.
versus draining and vampiric ways of fraud. So
Yes.
what your advice would you give?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with the 30-second elevator speech that I start every one of my readings with. I mean, Kara knows about this.
Let's hear it.
This. Here's my 30-second elevator speech. I am not a fortune teller. It's not my job to run your life. I have enough trouble running mine. It is not my job to look at the cards and tell you exactly what's going to happen, because I don't know. The cards tell me this is the energy that's going on around you right now. What are you going to do with that? It's really this concept of validation. Very often that's our biggest job as tarot readers, making someone understand that they're not crazy. They really are feeling this, and this is what's going on around them. But to also serve as like being on a spiral staircase, giving people the ability to go up and down that staircase, look at the same issue, but from a different perspective. That's what we offer them. And then ethical. To be ethical is truly the number one thing that both readers and the person being read need to have in mind. Don't come in to me as the reader asking to find out what's going on in your husband's head. He's not sitting in front of me. I'm happy to tell you what you're feeling about what's going on in your husband's head, but I'm not reading him. I can't do that. Same thing with an astrological chart. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come in and, well, this is my boyfriend's, the guy I just met's birth date and information. Tell me if we're compatible. I said, no. Sorry.
No. Don't even have to look at the chart.
Yeah, happen. I mean, he should run. This is really my point. Be transparent. Be as honest and transparent as you can. Don't claim ability to do something you can't do. Don't assume credentials you don't have as a reader. You're not a medical practitioner unless you've been to med school. Do not attempt to try. That's why I don't do medical astrology. I don't do
me either.
I will say this is kind of indicating that this is something to pay attention to. You should probably talk to your doctor so you feel more secure. But, and the moment you hear, as a reader, the moment you hear a reader say to you, gee, it just doesn't feel clear to me right now. If you come back next week, maybe it'll be better. Girl, run. It's common sense stuff.
Yeah.
But as Beck said earlier, I also understand the validity of that law. The difference is, I don't see myself as a fortune teller. Okay. I see myself as an intuitive counselor. You are free to take or not the information I give you. I'm not giving you advice. I'm simply giving you better information for you to make your own best informed decision.
Correct.
And you'll hear me trip over myself constantly saying that. It's not my job to tell you this relationship is done. However, I will say something's got to give. What are you going to do? And I always put the responsibility back on the client.
Yeah.
It's amazing and just like really validating, because that's like everything that you said is 100% what I've always done. And I haven't been reading like professionally. Like everyone's, oh, you're a professional tarot. Anyone can learn this, I'm not special.
There's no magic.
Right. And I think it's amazing that I too have realized like my job in my community is to validate things that people probably already know. it's just like I am the sounding board of like, no, like you said, you're not crazy. There's an eclipse season happening, babe. Like, it's a lot right now. I got you. So I think that, you know, in the way that maybe a clergy member might be the sounding board for somebody in confession almost, I feel like not in the way that I am like any sort of spiritual authority or leader, but I'm someone who is there, and I make myself open to the community to talk, you know, to me, and then and just like lay their burdens out if they need that. Now, obviously, like if it's something that I can't handle, I'm like, hey, love you, but consider therapy. Here's the number of my therapist. Let me know, you know, because I know I went to art school. No one is asking me for legal advice, you know, but I try to like, I think you can kind of tell, I don't know, I'm not really like a doctor or anything, but yeah, I just want to say thank you for like validating like everything that I have felt, but like haven't been able to put it out. I think it's amazing. So anyway, sorry.
And that's pretty much it. The whole key is to treat your reader as you would want to be, treat your client as you would want to be treated. Do you want to be ripped off? Do you want to be lied to? Do you want to be treated like a commodity or scammed? Well, then don't do it to your clients.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're going to go into some of the points you said there. We're going to talk about the red flags and the green lights and the yellow flags too, because, you know, some of us, if we're brand new and we just started entering into this space, we're like, you know, I think I want to get a reading. How do I find someone? Like, I'm listening what they're saying here, and I definitely agree. This makes sense. But sometimes there are things that you enter into new space. You think maybe there's a different etiquette here. Like, think about the first time you've ever gone to a yoga class. A lot of times you enter into a yoga class, like, what do I do? Oh, looks like everyone's lying their mats up. Okay, I'll do that. There's not a trauma-informed space, meaning for most part, we do trauma-informed yoga, but like if you don't have that, a space where you're informed is what I mean by trauma informed. You know what to expect going in, what the etiquette is, what is okay to ask, what is not okay to ask. And we're going to talk about those things so that you have an idea from a perspective as getting a reading. What are good things and what are things you should probably not engage in that way? Go ahead, Pat.
Just really quick, I'm going to have to bow out because speaking of this, I have a client that I have to see. But yeah, that's another thing that as a reader, it would be wise to sort of, what are you expecting from this when you sit down with your client? Say, what's your experience with the tarot? You know, try to get a grasp of what they know before you sit down with them. Because your goal is not to have them walking out of the room saying, oh my God, I can't believe how much she knew about me. Instead, have them walking out of the room saying, oh my God, I can't believe how much more I now know about myself. And that's what your whole goal should be.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Talking about that too.
I gotta go. I'm so sorry to leave you. It was such a pleasure to meet you both, Kenzie and Beck.
Pleasure.
Of course. So good to meet you. Have a great appointment.
Thank you. Love you, Kara. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm so grateful for Pat. It's a matter of like having another person
Yeah.
feels they're on the same page, you know, like there are a lot of people that I've talked to that they're out there with their guns blazing and their axes and they want to go and fight. And I love them. I care for them as a community member, but I know that that's not the right way. So when we were speaking and I watched your video and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, cool. Because I'm in me. So it's like, it's lucky I can read people. And I'm like, oh, this will be a perfect person to, you're in the same space of let's not create more anger and fear around this issue. We can talk about it,
Right.
but let's clear the smoke. Let's clear the air. Let's clear this energy that we are all carrying around.
Exactly. Because I wasn't as healed from in my personal like journey. I feel like if I hadn't started so young and like been through the experiences that I've been through, I definitely think this could have gone very differently. And I've been trying to like keep the vibe kind of like light because I don't want people like burning down the police department. That's not what this is about. That's just going to make us look worse. Like, let's be an exemplar of what our faith teaches us to do, whatever path that is. Because most religions in the world generally preach like peace and love, like no matter what you're looking at, no matter, you know, for the most part, at least, like, you know,
the core of most of these belief systems. Love thy human and the earth.
Yeah.
Love things. Just love things.
Yeah. And like live your life in a fulfilling way that helps people. How can you be upset with that? So, you know, and yeah, I do get heated because, like, again, it is very like they came into my business. I can't believe it. But at the same time, like, I think the channeled rage of like generations of women who this has happened to was just like I could feel it in the shop. And I knew, I was like, don't be the hysterical woman. Don't play into what they think you are going to be. Just be the professional and have I'm a Virgo. You think I don't have receipts? You know? So anyways.
We are doing, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is very healing for me as well. And we're going to talk because, you know, it's been something that as a business owner and as a reader for years, as I started to see things in the community, I'm going out there with this open heart of wanting to help the world.
Yes.
And this naivety about there's no one out there that's going to do harm. You know, doesn't really exist, does it? And so I started in that position, it gave me the potential for people to come apply at my place of business, want to do workshops or things like that, want to apply to be vendors at our Holistic Expo. For those of you listening, this is South Central PA. We have one of the oldest Holistic Expos that's been in operation for 21 years. This year will be 22 years. 2024 will be 22 years. And this is a space where I'm so grateful to have the experience of seeing some of the seedy underbelly of the spiritual community, because I've been able to then go, we can have some discernment here, or for who are safe people to let into this event that's going to be in connection with my community, and we don't want to have them have any harm. And here's also a space where we can have an amazing podcast to educate people. We have the authority that we've been given by the community. Thank you. You've given us authority. I have no authority. I'm just a person. But you've given us authority through your trust, through your patronage, through continuing to support us and New Visions Books and Gifts and Firefly Hollow and places like the Serpent's Key. All of you out there that follow a spiritual community, it's because of you that we continue to be able to continue to come out and speak out in a loving way about these things. And I'm just so grateful because for years, because it is almost like a hidden dogma in the spiritual community to be kind and be loving and be love and light to a degree that could be spiritual bypassing, which is toxic. We talk about in this episode of the podcast. But in my position, I was even meeting professionals that have a shingle out, have a storefront, or have a space where they're doing things that are completely unethical, having clients come to me saying their experiences, and me in a position of leadership saying, well, it's not really appropriate for me to call them out to the public, and that's pretty much drama. You don't want to do that. You don't want to go on Facebook and make a post and say so-and-so's doing this. Right. And it wasn't, there were places where we had approached people, or they had been approached, and some of the things were still happening. And I felt powerless in a position of leadership, because I felt that there were a lot of individuals in our community that were following certain people. And I thought, those people have given their trust in this individual. Right. Is it my job to burst the bubble? Is it my job to say that, hey, maybe you're not having discernment. Hey, I think they might be taking your power away from you. They wouldn't have the space to hear me. They wouldn't have the ears to hear me. And so for years, I kind of suffered in silence. Like, I want to speak out about this shit. I don't want to say any names. I will not be speaking. We're going to be sharing stories today, Denzi and I. And we're not going to share any names, but we're going to share the stories to show you the kind of things that I've been sitting on. So that's why I'm saying this is a very healing space for me. So thank you guys for both being here. Thank all of you for listening, just so that I can share this, get this off my chest, as well as to give you guys, most importantly, spaces for empowerment. We're going to look at red flags, red flags, red flags, and then also green lights. These are things we can absolutely lean into when you see these and support. Right. So before we go into kind of my stories, I want to have Denzi share your background. And again, this might be a a spiritual trauma, religious trauma trigger for those of you out there listening, that this is something that might bring up stuff for you. But I want to have you share your experience and your story.
So, again, thanks for having me on here, Kara. So I think my experience growing up, I was raised as a Pentecostal as a child, right? And my parents are hardcore fundamentalists, which is fine if that's the way they want to go. I don't judge them for that. But ironically, a lot like Beth's story, from the time I was about 6 years old, and probably still to this day, they thought that I was possessed by dark energy or a demon. I used to go to therapies with the pastors and the deacons, and there was one point I remember the entire congregation of this specific church, I won't mention the name of, laid hands on me to rebuke these demons out of me. I was like 8, right?
Yeah.
So like that type of religious trauma, right? I didn't know it then, but it really created this reluctancy in me.
Yeah.
Because now that as I grew into a young man, I realized, well, this is not right, right? I love these things because I love them, not because there's some demon in me telling me that I need to do these things. You know, it wasn't malicious. So I, in secret, began practicing tarot when I was about 12 or 13. It's 13. When I was a teenager, I got my first deck. It was the Revelations Tarot. Beautiful deck. And I practiced on my friends and myself in secret. And I became really attached to the imagery of the cards and the beauty of the story, right? The fool's journey.
And let's go into that briefly, because there may be listeners that have never had a tarot reading and it's still obscure, and it may seem that they've only seen the Hollywood, the devil card and the tower card and the death card and these and like these literal interpretations. Like, let's share a little bit about, just briefly, about the tarot in general.
Yeah, so the tarot is the journey of life, and it's not even just the journey of your entire life, it's the journey of the life at that moment, right? So we all start as the fool and we all end as the world, right?
And this is like archetypal milestones and stages that you go through in any particular start to finish, and it's just symbolic, each of these milestones.
Right. And the fool is like no knowledge, right? We're just gonna step on out there into the world and learn, right? It's the whole experience of gaining knowledge is the journey. And sometimes that knowledge is painfully gained, and other times it's beautifully gained. It just depends on what choices we make in the many paths that are presented to us. Also, there is external influences too that influence our journey as well. But and I think Beck really nailed it in the article too. It's metaphors for our life, right? These are not exact things. These are not, the death card doesn't mean you're going to die tomorrow, which is Hollywood's take, right? Mm-hmm. It could be a number of things. It could be the death of an idea. It could be the death of a business. It can be the old ways of thinking and gaining the new ways of thinking. In my personal opinion, the death card is the most beautiful card in the deck. And because it offers the opportunity for the end of a life lesson and the dawn of a new beginning.
Yeah.
And I think it's the most beautiful card in the deck. So with my experience, tarot, because I have been isolated from family connection most of my life, right? Tarot has guided me through some really challenging times. I used to read quite often for myself. Now I only read for myself when it is dire. One, because I believe in free will, right? I don't always... There was a time in my life where I did live my life by the cards all the time, because I was very young and confused individual, and they never let me down.
Yeah.
And I can't say that about the church. No offense. I don't have any. Here's my thing. I accept everyone for who they are, what they believe, their religious systems. If you're a Satanist and you worship Satan and that is your light in your life, congratulations. I am happy for you. If you are a devout Christian and Jesus Christ the Nazarene is the way to your enlightenment, congratulations. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
That's amazing that you can have that enlightenment in your life.
Yeah.
If it's tarot, if it's art, whatever it is that brings light into your life and helps ground you and guide you, there should be no one or any individual that should condemn you for it. Here's the kicker, though. If you believe you are the only one that is right and that every other way to enlightenment is a false way, that is where we part ways. It's a red flag.
It takes away your power. It takes away power in general. So yeah.
So that's a little bit of my background. I founded my art company. I did own an art gallery in downtown New York called the Rooted Artist Collective a few years back. I did close it. And now I own a company called Denzi Dark LLC, which I am Denzi Dark with a Y. Mm-hmm. And I incorporate tarot imagery into a lot of my art. And I have found for folks that know nothing about tarot, that it resonates with them profoundly. So I'm going to continue doing that. I will still continue doing my readings as a wounded healer, because most of us are anyway.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
So it's really good to have a space for a voice here on this topic. And I don't talk about tarot often, like other than with my tarot community people. One, because of the stigma, right? But I think it's time to lay that to rest. And the universe here has chosen Beck to be the face of that fight. So to be a part of that. Yeah. So thank you.
And also, if there's anybody out there that I have not even heard of yet, Beck, that these other articles, who knows, there might be people in Iowa or other places that just hasn't, the story has not gotten out or it hasn't circulated. We honor you too. If you're out there and you're also, this isn't just going to be in this area, it's happening worldwide.
All over the world. I've had people from New Zealand reach out to me, like Middle Earth, and, like people from the UK being like, what the hell is happening in the colonies? And I'm like, I don't know. If you want to come back, I guess, come fix it.
There's still tires over here.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for the response the community has had. I will say that. I think it's amazing for sure.
Thank you guys so much for listening to part 1 of this series with Beck Lawrence. We appreciate all of your support around the globe in our spiritual communities, our metaphysical bookstores, our spiritual shops across the world, and those of you who are just watching and really leaning in to support this transition where we create this education and empowerment around this topic. If you have not already, follow the Serpent's Key on Instagram and on Facebook. Beck will be posting any updates in legislation, any petitions you may be able to help us sign, as well as any other updates. So now, what does happen if someone tries to sell you a $3,000 crystal to heal or curse on your family? Or you're getting private messages from Beck or any other people on Instagram asking you if they can give you a reading. So next episode, in part 2, Beck Lawrence, Denzi, and I are going to talk about scams and frauds and some of the things that really trigger us when it comes to the spiritual community of readers and the disempowerment that's happening. Our intention for part 2 of this episode series is to empower you, to help you identify red flags as well as some green lights when it comes to choosing a reader or an intuitive healing practitioner. And if you're already a practitioner yourself, this episode is going to be priceless when it comes to moving forward this profession as far as empowering others and sharing this around with your clients and your community. So thank you guys again so much for listening to part 1, and we'll see you next time, my friends.